There we go. Okay, welcome everybody to the first mesh meeting of 2024. That's the formality. Now let's go back to whatever we were doing. No, Nick has published a document which I was hoping we could take a look at.
Okay,
And
I'll put it in the chat. I'll put a link into the chat.
okay,
Just a
and
second.
anybody can access that?
I hope.
Okay.
Yeah, I set it up so anyone can look at it.
Okay. Because I want to make sure that
If you
yeah,
want, you can pull it up and put it into the share screen
I
by
can do
clicking on
that.
that link.
I am getting the document. Okay, I got it. Introducing AI. Huh, not now. Going back to Zoom and get rid of the chat and share screen. And it's that one. And share. So can everybody see that?
I see it.
All right, Nick, I'm gonna turn the floor over to you, my friend, and not to
I
put
think
you
that
on the
the
spot.
projects, in fact, I'll just share my screen as long as I've got this.
Okay, then I'll stop sharing here.
But so what I did was let's see if I can go. All right. So let's see here. I've got too many windows open. All right, cool. Yeah, so what I did is I think at the last mesh meeting we sort of had kind of a brainstorming session where we sort of talked about all kinds of different things that were going on with AREDN, with the mesh that we're working on. And I tried to boil all of that down into a few actual sort of projects that with deliverables and questions to answer, and I think clear next steps about what needs to happen in order to sort of get organized a little bit about this and sort of try and call out, like, you know, someone needs to do this and someone needs to do this other thing, and if we do these things, I think that we will have something meaningful, right? We will have at least in West Seattle, and I know this is a bigger audience, but I was interested in focusing on West Seattle because I think we can leverage the West Seattle Amateur Radio Club, because there's a lot of people there and maybe even some resources to sort of make, you know, put together a usable AREDN mesh that we could use for both fun as well as for supporting some emergency communications. And so I kind of put together a few of these different projects, right? The first of these is just figuring out what are all of the sites that we have that we can count on that that could be part of a core infrastructure for AREDN. And that is distinct from just the many different nodes that random people have up, which is great. Obviously, that's really important. Super big part of a viable AREDN mesh, but it's not necessarily things that we can definitely count on. And I don't think it's fair to say to someone, oh, you're such a key node, you can't possibly bring your node down because otherwise the whole network goes down. I don't think that that's fair. And so rather what I want to do is I want to be able to identify some of those, like, what are those key sites? And I think these are sites like Providence Mount St. Vincent, or the Brookdale Admiral site, the what's currently the West Seattle Senior Center that maybe needs to be at a different location. But just sort of identifying what those sites are, making sure that those sites have a node that's running the latest software, and figuring out what services each of those different nodes are running, if those different nodes have tunnels set up or not, or if they should have tunnels set up and they don't currently, can we get that set up? Who's the contact person we have at some of these sites? Like, I think right now there sort of is kind of a very distributed information about who's our contact person at the Brookdale site in Admiral versus who's the contact person at the West Seattle Senior Center. And it's not that this is a mystery necessarily. I know that there's someone that knows the answer to these things, but it's really hard for someone new to get involved if we don't write that kind of stuff down. So that was one of the projects, is just basically going to all of these different sites and figuring out, are they currently up, make sure that they're up, and make sure that we have some documentation about how we can support each of these different sites and what each of these different sites is providing back to the mesh. So that was the first project that I had sort of called out. The second one was interfacing with ACS and emergency hubs, the Seattle emergency hubs, because I think that that's probably at least in my mind, is the most obvious way to support emergency communications, is in a really serious, meaningful way. Those two groups are already doing lots of stuff with emergency communications. I know Seattle ACS is said, at least Tim Helming has said, that he wants AREDN to be a big part of what ACS is doing. And so anything that we do, anything that West Seattle does with AREDN, or other groups around Seattle does with AREDN, seems like working with ACS makes a ton of sense. But rather than just saying, oh yeah, we should work with ACS, I want to actually come up with like, what does that mean? What are we doing with ACS, or what are we doing with emergency hubs? I would love to say, we want to have enough mesh that we could connect some of the emergency hubs using mesh, using AREDN. I think that would be a really cool use case. And so, like, the next time there's an emergency hubs exercise, it could include something with AREDN. So I think those are the first two. Before I go further than that, I want to stop for a second and check and see how people are thinking about this, if this is making sense so far.
It is making sense to me, and I would say that I'm probably the brain trust when it comes to locations and who to contact. So what I can do is you're such a great note taker. I think if I could pull you around with me to do site visits, you would have the opportunity to see where they're at, see who I talk to get access. You talked about line of sight surveys in your document. I think you'd be able to see firsthand what each node should be able to see. Yeah, so I can see them in my head, but I can drive to them faster, I think, rather than tell you about them.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And in fact, I've already taken a bunch of notes from conversations that we've had in the past. I think doing more of that.
You've been taking notes with me talking?
That's right. Yes. So yeah, I mean, I think that part of that is just like putting together a document that we can share that says this is the list of sites. And I know that John, you already have a spreadsheet that has a lot of this information in it. But one of the things I want to do is I want to sort of distinguish some of those sites as distinct from kind of personal nodes to these are nodes that the club is willing to support.
Yeah, what I can do is just turn that spreadsheet over to you. I can actually just make you an editor if you want to just work off of it, or you can just get a copy and make it however you want. What's your preference?
Why don't I start to just put together a separate document, and so that document can continue to be the sort of the global list of everybody that gets involved can add.
Yeah, the reason I was offering you the opportunity to edit is because I have not received any updates for quite a while. So, so if for that document to be a living document, it needs to have more updates to put in there. So if you had edit capability, you could add new
Sure.
information as you go, because from my standpoint, I just don't have any new information.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. That sounds really good. And one of the things that I've done these crawls where I sort of start from a node and then I just ask that node what nodes it can see, and then I ask all of those nodes what nodes they can see. So I have these crawls to sort of look at what the connectivity is, and it might be interesting to overlay that crawl information with your spreadsheet to sort of identify which of these nodes are connected to anybody else.
Right. It's a great idea. Another thing that you had in your project work items was the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi 4 is currently at Tom's to deal with there it is. The phone server. He was going to work on that when he had time. Obviously, he has not had time, but
Mhm.
he does have that Raspberry Pi. So that's where that resides.
Yeah, and so the idea there, at least when we were doing that brainstorming activity, was that this could be an IP phone directory, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, right. So one of these things is figuring out what are the set of services we want to support on the mesh. And if doing an IP phone directory is one of them, then this sounds like a great resource to use. Is that something? Do we want to say like we should really try and push forward a IP phone directory?
I know Jim Edwards would support that,
Great.
especially for the parade, especially. Um, there is a pub at Providence St. Vincent. Sorry, my brain is moving in a different direction at the same time. Um, the hub itself has the little piece that plugs into a laptop and becomes a mesh node. I don't
Hmm.
know what that's called, a mini mesh, something or other. That can see the node up on top of the roof. Um, Frank has got one that he can travel around and do updates to the mesh nodes. Um, and he may know what the passwords of some are if he's changed them from what we did W7AW, W7AW password.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm scattered. Sorry.
No, that's great. This is all good information.
Nick, Nick, just a second. I just looked at that spreadsheet and you are an editor on that spreadsheet already.
Great. Fantastic. All right. Yeah. So then I guess the next two things that I had here was figuring out both what are the physical locations that we want to have nodes at in order to create some kind of a reliable backbone across well, ultimately West Seattle, but starting with the Grand Parade route, I think is a really interesting place to sort of, it's a place to start that has an actual use case where we could imagine saying that by the time we have the West Seattle Grand Parade, we want to have enough AREDN coverage that all along that parade route, we could have AREDN nodes that we're using in order to help support that parade. And I don't at all think that this is a instead of thing. I think this is totally in addition to the traditional HTs that are always getting used, that are super easy to use, super reliable. But imagine if we also had the ability to be taking pictures and sharing that all along the parade route and sharing information that way. Like, I mean, maybe it's, someone loses something and we can take a picture and see what that looks like at, some location, so that someone else at a different location has that information to help support, getting that item back to its owner. That seems like a great use case for AREDN. And I think it's very realistic that we should be able to set up enough infrastructure that AREDN covers the whole Grand Parade route. It's not that big of a geographic area, but it's also a super important arterial, so that any kind of backbone that we would want to build should be able to cover that same geographic area. It's already an event that the club supports, so I think that this is a great place to start, I guess. And then the other part of getting that up and running and working reliably is figuring out the channel frequency plan, right? I think we got some good feedback from Mark that we can't just have everybody on the same channel, which is what we do today. And that's going to cause us a lot of problems, and we'll need to figure out, how that works and what the problems are and what the solutions are. And I'm imagining this being both informing what we build out, but also having enough knowledge so that when we have these Northwest Mesh meetings, we don't just talk about it as this mysterious problem that we, don't exactly understand and don't necessarily have a solution for, which at least is how I feel right now. Right now, I feel like channel planning is a mystery. It makes it hard, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if you guys feel differently, but I wish I didn't feel that way. I wish that I had enough knowledge to be able to say, oh, this is the best practice. This is what you should do. If you have two nodes that are co-located and you want to point one north and one south, here's how you fix it. Something like that.
Well, what I was thinking about while you were talking was that what is saturation on one set of frequencies, or one frequency like -2? What becomes the point at which it's saturated and we need to go to a different channel?
Yes.
We already know that two nodes back to back aren't advisable. One node above another one isn't advisable. But what if one node is a block away facing the opposite direction? Is that workable in that I'm talking about just a TP link? If one is facing north at Dakota and one is facing south at Oregon, do they speak to each other at a lower power? And can that extend the range of the mesh?
Yes. That's exactly the kind of question. And I mean, I think that what the way to answer this is going to be trying some experiments and then also asking questions in the bigger AREDN group and looking for experts who can help give us some guidance. But I mean, ultimately, I think we're going to have to get hands-on. We're going to have to get to the point where we said, oh, well, we tried having these two nodes on the same channel and it didn't work, and we changed them to two different channels and then it did work. And we'll need to have that kind of hands-on experience. But it's really important to not just do that experiment and then someone knows the answer, but rather try and figure out how to distill and share that information with everyone.
Right.
One thing that can be done is take one of these rockets that has the dual outputs on it and feed a panel antenna facing north and a panel antenna facing south. They're on the same radio. They will not cause interference to each other. And you'll get the same effect of having two TP links back to back without the downside of having the interference descents and all that. So that's one option. It's more expensive than two TP links, obviously, but one radio, two antennas, and you do the same thing.
That sounds awesome, right? And I think doing that and verifying that that works in a way that if you put two TP links back to back doesn't work, I think would be super valuable information to be able to say, like, yes, we did it. We did the same site, two TP links back to back, did not, neither of them could see anybody. One M2 rocket with two different panel antennas facing one north, one south did work. It could see everybody. That I think would be a really, really valuable data point.
Then part of that would be then to ask the club to help us do that lab by purchasing the 2 sector antennas and the 1 rocket radio. Or do you think we need more than that?
I think that would work. I do have 2 rockets here on Omni antennas that are not deployed to anything. We could use one of those radios. I do have 2 small 4-inch square panel antennas. I don't know what their gain is, that I used when I was playing around trying to pick up signals from the car. I could certainly put something together as a standalone setup like that, that we can compare with 2 TP links without having to do any real investment. So there's that option.
And we also have the rocket M2 with an antenna up on the senior center that actually, quite honestly, needs to come down.
Yeah.
So I think we have the equipment, and with the Salvation Army having 1 sector antenna, we only really need to get one single sector antenna for the experiment. I don't think Salvation Army is they're not into doing radio like when Hector was there. Hector, by the way, got transferred to Guam, and then he's already been transferred to San Diego. So they bounce around quite a bit. Hector was the captain of the Salvation Army. Yeah, so I think we just need to talk to the club board and ask them for permission to buy 1 more sector antenna. And then I think we have the rest of the equipment that we need. And then we did it in a controlled environment. We wouldn't need the filters that we have at some of the locations. Because a cell phone is right in that same band area and it does cause an issue.
Okay, well, that's great. And then I think, the last thing that I had here was coming up with like a service plan. Like what are the service, because AREDN is just an infrastructure, right? What are we running on AREDN, right? And actually I talked to Jonathan, President Jonathan of the club, and he had some thoughts about he had sort of 3 things that he wanted to see. One was a distributed weather service. So like if I think the idea is the mesh is always pulling in weather information and archiving it and then distributing that over the mesh, so that if you lose internet, but you still connected to the mesh, you can get that weather information. And if anybody on the mesh has internet and they're getting weather information, they're distributing that over the mesh so that everybody on the mesh can get that weather information. So that was one use case that he thought was a good idea. The second one was having mesh chat. I just don't think he was familiar with mesh chat, which I think also suggests that's something to do with how do we publicizing what these services are, what they can do, why you should use them, etc. And then the last thing that he had suggested was running a DX cluster node connected to the mesh, so that if you're doing DX spotting and you don't have internet, but you can get to the mesh, you can put your DX spots into the DX cluster.
Okay, so I would add to one that Steve Jackson was working on with Mark over on the East Coast, and that was an email server over the mesh. So I don't know how that shakes out, and I don't know what Steve's status is. They were working on doing an email server a year ago, and Mark seems to know how to do it, but Mark hasn't joined us in a while, so I'm not sure what his status is.
Great. And network time protocol server is something that's come up before that currently on our mesh, on the mesh that we have here in the Northwest, we don't currently have anybody running an NTP server, which is unfortunate because most of the nodes that connect to the mesh don't have good clocks. And then that causes problems with some of these other services like mesh chat, for instance. If the node's clock is incorrect, mesh chat does weird stuff, and that's unfortunate. And so if we ran an NTP server on the mesh, that would be great, just to help make all of these other services work better. The IP phone directory is something we've talked about. This email server sounds like another thing to look at. I don't know if there's other stuff that we should be thinking about, like as critical services to run. But yeah, those were some things that came to mind. And what I'm imagining here is documenting what these are, making sure that they're running correctly, appropriately, the way that we want them to run, and then doing a little bit of work to like publicize this. Maybe that means writing a page that we put up on the website. That's like, here's sort of the what services are running on the Northwest Mesh. And, you know, there are people who are committed to supporting them and making sure that they're running properly. But yeah.
I want to make a point that right now our methods for documenting and sharing information are pretty disjointed, and we tend to be focused on West Seattle as the website and so forth. But if this is a Northwest Mesh endeavor, there at some point probably should be a platform that services Northwest Mesh rather than just West Seattle and so forth, or ACS doing their, so that it can all come together. And I don't think the tools we have right now for documenting things right now are that great. It's kind of piecemeal, little chunks of information here and there. So if there's a platform we can use that can tie all this together in some unified way, that would be really great. I don't know that I could suggest one, but there probably is something out there that would help.
Didn't Jonathan check last year about Northwest Mesh or Pacific Northwest Mesh was available, or did he buy it?
Well, Tim, I think, bought a paid for. Oh, am I talking about the wrong person? Well, Tim, a guy named Tim, ACS, he reserved the domain name, northwestmesh.org, I think, which he's supposed to renew right now. But I'm not aware of any particular website other than what we've been doing.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's a website either. I was talking about just the domain was reserved by somebody on a meeting last year.
And NWMesh.com and NWMesh.org both redirect to NWMesh.w7aw.org.
Yeah. And that's just a kludge right now. We're kind of sub-hosting that information, but it's not very dynamic. And I'm thinking that we need something that is tailored to our needs rather than just this page hanging off a URL, or I have to hang off a domain name. So I'm just throwing that out there, because if we're going to invest a lot of time and energy into documentation, I think we need a better tools, and something that's inclusive, that brings in everybody, so that anybody who's involved in Northwest Mesh can be involved in that documentation process.
Well, I think we have the starting of a framework for that, but we just need to follow through on it and do what's necessary. I don't want to just agree totally, but I thought
Yeah,
that's
I
where
mean, I
we
guess
were
so.
going.
What in terms of how to proceed with this, I think the first thing that I'm looking for is buy-in that these are good projects. These, these are good questions to get answers to. These are good work items to do. And there aren't other things that we should be doing instead. And if we can get that, then I think the next piece after that is fleshing this out a little bit more and getting people to, like, organizing to get people to say, yeah, I can, I will work with X person to get this piece done, or I will work with Y person to get that piece done, or whatever. But we don't have to do that tonight. I just want
Yeah.
what I was looking for is enough feedback so that I can say, this is what that we as a group can say, this is what we're doing. This is what we
And
want to get done. Maybe it's more scope than we will get done in 20. I think Ron, you pointed out that if we got 20% of this done, that would be great progress, right? And I think that that's
right.
great. But yeah, so
Well,
that's
using
kind
this
of.
document that you wrote, Nick, I think we can take a look at that document and see how it fits into the grant uh, formation for AREDN, because they still have tons of money to give away. So part of that is for education. So if we start getting the mesh going again, um, equipment is one thing, but education of users is something that's covered. So paying for meeting space, paying for a website, those kinds of things that are uh, usable by the funds provided by the uh, AREDN folks, which I looked into. I started the prospect, saying we're going to put something at every fire station. Kind of copied Highline's document that was provided to me by Randy, and worked on it. And then Jonathan said he was going to take it over and expound on it, and it disappeared in the ether somewhere.
So there is sort of some proposal document that's floating around somewhere.
Yes, but it's very basic. It was no monetary specifics. It needed work, and it needed an educated person looking at it.
So maybe I can follow up with Jonathan and try and get, if he has that, get that back, or if he doesn't have that, then maybe just even going back to the Highline document that you're referencing and starting there to try and integrate that framework into these things that we're calling out here.
Yeah, and I'll look on my email, but if I can't find it, another resource might be Randy Neal's. Randy was the one that provided that copy to me. Um, uh, he's since, of course, gone to Canada, but I think he's still on the board to AREDN, so he may even be able to provide something a little bit more closer to home that he's seen
Do
that
you have
would help.
contact information for him?
I'll bring it with me in the morning.
Awesome.
Looking now, but that's not going to help. Exit the screen.
I just did a who is on the NWMESH.org, and it has to be, it's supposed to be renewed by the 13th of this month. So I think Tim needs to get on the stick, because I did alert him to the fact that it was going to expire, and he implied he had it handled, but if it's still scheduled to expire on the 13th, I think he's cutting it pretty close. Although you can always.
I have a meeting with Tim tomorrow night. I'm not going to be I'm just a fly on the wall, but I think if I had a chance, I'll try and ping him again.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll send that to him, what I'm looking at, and CC you. So you have a common reference point.
Great. All right. But are we sort of then in agreement that these are the right things to be focusing on?
I
And that
believe
there
they
aren't
are.
other things that are more important than these things that aren't sort of already covered here? I mean, I know like a lot of people are just seeing this for the first time, so maybe this is a hard, maybe the thing I'm asking is, can people take a look at this document and think about that a little bit and sort of over the next, 4 or 5 days, figure out if there's more feedback that needs to go into it?
I'm good with that.
Okay, great. Yeah, the rest of the document is just more background, that like these are use cases for AREDN. This is list of equipment and sites that we have and know about, and then just all of the brainstorming notes from that meeting that we had last time. So the first section is really the actual work. Okay. Great. I'll post this link because I think John just shared a PDF of this. So I will post this link back to the oops. Oh, I did. Great. Although it bounced. I'll figure that out. Cool. So that's what I had.
Okay. Let's jump down to Rob. Rob, you've been very
Hi.
quiet.
Sorry,
Anything going on with mesh down your way or up your way?
absolutely nothing. It's not okay. Yeah. Absolutely nothing right now. Been kind of concentrating on rebuilding our club since COVID kind of killed a lot of things. uh, and I haven't even had the chance to ask around, see with the various groups in Whatcom County and around us, including Canada, if there's anybody that's still interested in kind of rebuilding or building out an AREDN network up here. We had it for a while. When it first started, there was a lot of interest, but it seemed to have died down quite a bit. A lot of people, including myself, got sidetracked on other projects and everything else. And in fact, I'm in the process of at least temporarily moving back down to Arizona for a couple months or a few months. So kind of concentrating on that instead of the AREDN stuff. But it's one of the things that Nick mentioned earlier was that you were essentially, I guess, manually spidering through the AREDN networks and nodes clusters around your area. Is that essentially the gist of what
I
you
have a
said before?
script. I mean, it's an automated crawler, but
Well, yeah,
yeah.
no, so I was kind of wondering the map that's at least that I have access to here that's on AREDNMesh.org. Well, actually, there's two maps up there now: the supernode and the regular. But who maintains that? And do they have any? I haven't been able to find any data, at least on the web version or the internet accessed version, uh, of all the different services that are available on all the nodes that are at least checking in on this map here. This usercontent.ardenmesh.org. And I think the data is there if you're actually on the mesh, connected
think
to other
the
people, I think
way
you can list their services, but on the map itself, I haven't actually checked the XML or JSON file, whatever that they have shared up on the website here, but I don't think the services are listed in there, are they? For all the different nodes.
it doesn't look like it to me, and I think the way that stuff gets that ends up on that map is in your, when you're in your AREDN setup menu, you can input your latitude and longitude, and if you do that and your node has an internet connection, it'll automatically update this map.
Okay.
But I think you're right. It doesn't
And,
look like this includes any information about the services. You'd have to click through each node to the node console and then see.
okay. Well, one of my thoughts is that if anybody or your script uh, can actually reach at least, I should probably organize my thoughts better before I open my mouth, but um, have a way to at least look at the different maps that we have for all the nodes that are available that do check in off or on the internet. Maybe check in with the owners of those and see if maybe the either the single nodes or the solitary clusters that aren't connected to anybody else or anybody surrounding them, somehow try to get have somebody get a hold of the owners of those and see if maybe they want to connect um, a tunnel to connect with maybe a wider network. Um, now that we've got the super nodes available, um, I don't know how to configure any of that yet, but um, if somebody was concerned about kind of overwhelming their own network with additional traffic from elsewhere, uh, now with the super nodes, it probably, as far as I understand, that's not as big of an issue if their super node is set up properly. Correct? I mean, I don't know if any of you are really familiar with the super node functionality yet.
I don't
But
really understand the supernode functionality personally.
okay. Okay, so that's, but yeah, I was just kind of thinking, for those separated clusters or individuals that at least maybe do a search out there on the data that you can get off the, I think that you can download the whole file of everybody that they have on the map there, but see if anybody doesn't want to be as isolated as at least they appear to be on the map, and maybe have them check into somebody else or set up organize some other individuals that have the equipment that could handle, possibly a central tunnel server, so they could actually talk to each other and kind of expand the network and make it a lot more robust. And I don't know.
So you're
I
sort of
think it's a lot
saying
more.
we've got all these islands of, one node here, two nodes that can talk to each other over there, and currently they're all disconnected. Wouldn't it be better if we could get them connected, even if they need to connect over a tunnel? It would be better to have them be part of the unified mesh rather than have all these isolated meshes.
That's exactly. And
yeah, no, I think that
know
makes tons of sense.
I know a while back, including some of us up here, did have some of the AREDN nodes connected to the backbone, the HAMWAN backbone. Um, so if the internet did go down, at least we had, our own HAMWAN network to talk to each other with on the back end. But I don't know. It's just a thought that I've been kicking around, that because I see so many individuals out there that it seems that you know, there are a bunch of people that are still, you know, that are interested in doing this, but there's just not a lot of backing, I guess, or coordination, cooperation with other individuals. And actually,
Yeah.
that was another thing that I was kind of curious. I wanted to ask you if I can send out your monthly meeting, your Zoom meeting information to our Mount Baker Amateur Radio Club up here. Uh, Pass it out to the members if anybody else would be interested, you know, going forward to join and you know, if they're interested in Arden, to join your Zoom meeting and maybe get involved,
How would
you
we
know,
address
remotely.
that? How would
It's
how would
fine
we
by me.
address that?
It's fine by me. I've always said since I've been starting this Zoom call that it was available to everybody in the Pacific Northwest. So we get folks from all over down in Portland area, Vancouver, the East Coast. All are welcome. There's, you know, it's just a very inclusive group as far as I'm concerned. But I'm not the only one, so I'll leave it up to the group as a whole to decide.
Would that be okay to distribute your Zoom information to our group, not the wider internet, because otherwise we'll get Zoom bombed.
Rob, how would we address that? Do we have to, is there a way to just post it to your forum? How would we do that?
Oh, actually, if you wanted to come to our Groups.io group, sign up. I can approve you to post on our forum area, our
Okay.
message
Can't you
area.
just take the information from the email you send out, John, and repost it in his group?
Yes, I can. I think I'm already a member because of your invite. There's a general group and then there's a digital group, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I would post it to the general group.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Okay.
post it. I'm the president of the club, and let's see. Yeah, I could post it there and give it to Steve. He's the president of the digital group, and
So
here,
do you want me to
I'll,
post it or do you want to post it yourself?
either way. I mean, I can post it if you'd like.
I'm
I get
quite
a copy
capable.
of.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
quite
yeah.
willing. I'm quite willing to post it to the group.
Yeah, that
If there, I think I could even just add your Groups.io email as an email, another email on the list. I have what's called a blind copy list. We send it out to the Northwest Mesh Groups.io and also to our local group for our club. And then I have what's called a blind copy list of about 20 addresses. And I could add the email, your email for your Groups.io to that list, to that blind copy list. So it would just go to your forum, your Groups.io forum.
I'd like to do a test run first, just before we add that to our mailing list. Just do like a first invitation, see how many people are actually interested. Otherwise,
Okay.
It might just alienate some people from keeping their message box open.
Okay, so you could do the first post and then give me the okay to add it to my blind copy list. Because
Okay,
otherwise, see,
that'll work.
the way it works is that I send out on a schedule. It's automated, so that on the day before our meeting tonight, it's sent out automatically, so I don't even have to think about it. It's just a blind copy list and just goes out to whoever's on that list. And so it takes some of the stress off of me having to worry about getting these things out on time. But once it's on the blind copy list, then I don't it's, it's a done deal. So if you want to do a test case, by all means, what do you need from me to do your test case?
Actually, it's already done. I already receive an automatic email from you for the meetings, and I could just forward that to the group for the first
Okay.
time, and
Okay,
then
okay.
we'll go on from there depending on how much interest we got. And
So so the thing is that it goes out the day before the actual meeting. So is that suitable for your situation?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so
And if
so you,
anything, oh, go
so do
ahead.
you get it from, are you on my blind copy list or are you getting it from the group's IO?
Um, Hold on just a moment.
So anyone who wants, they can join our Northwest Mesh Groups IO. And I think that might be included in the email that I sent. I'm not sure.
Um,
They don't have, but they wouldn't have to. I mean, they
yeah,
could just,
I think I'm on the mailing list here. Let's see. No, the wrong one. So many emails. I'll have to take a look.
okay.
Man.
Yeah,
Oh
just,
my
you
God.
can contact you have my email, right?
Yeah, yeah. And
Yes,
yeah,
yes, Maya, right?
Yeah. Steve Stroh, N8GNJ is our president of the digital group, and yeah, I'll talk to him to see if what would be a better. I mean, Arden would probably be better in the digital group, but I think the initial feelers I want to put out just be for across the board for everybody, and just to see if anybody's interested or anybody actually has the hardware. Or I mean, it's not expensive to get started here, and I probably could lend out half my equipment here right now. So, but yeah, I'll just do that myself, and then after that, I'll let you know how much interest we have, and we could go from there and
Okay.
just do an automated thing and add it to your process there for getting messages out.
Rob, I was just gonna say, I think your idea about trying to get hams in the Pacific Northwest that are interested in Arden actually on the Pacific Northwest mesh that we're building, I think that sounds like a really good idea. And the points that you're making about, like, well, how should these people get plugged into that mesh? That's a great question, and we should totally have an answer for that, right? It should be the kind of thing that somebody who just gets their license and is like, hey, I learned about this Arden thing. Oh, there's this Pacific Northwest mesh. I wonder how I get connected. It seems like that should be a really easy question to answer. And maybe it's not right now, right? Like, well, who would I tunnel into, right? Like right now, I'm tunneled into the Seattle ACS Emergency Operations Center. But is that, I don't, having spoken to Carl, who runs that, I don't think that that's just a resource that's 100% available for anybody who wants it. Which means
That's
that we should
correct.
try and figure out something that there is a solution for those kinds of people. Or HamWAN, I think that's an awesome idea. It would be cool, really cool if it was really obvious how you plug your Arden node into HamWAN. And I don't know how to do that. So
I
Obviously, I don't
don't,
either.
but Kevin Snow might. I think it was Kevin that did that a while back. Yeah, he's our tech radio guru. He knows a lot about everything. So uh, I could talk to him about that and see if he has any notes about that.
that would be awesome. Yeah, that would be a really valuable thing to share back with the group. if you figure that out, or even figure out any pointers or places to look for more information.
Okay.
All right.
And
Tom.
one of
Oh, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Oh,
Nope.
I was gonna say your website, well, Northwest Mesh or w7aw.org. It's possible that you know what WordPress is, right?
Yep.
That's what we use.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
WordPress
well,
is come so far, and there's so many plugins you could use that you can organize a lot of that information.
Yeah. yeah,
I mean,
the page that you see on the mesh w70.org is just a kind of holder, a space placeholder. It's not incorporated into the overall website. w78.org is a WordPress website, but I just set this one up as a static page because
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to be there that long. I didn't want to invest a lot of time and energy into it because I was hoping and expecting they would have its own website, but it's been dragged out. And Ron, I just sent an email to Tim listing the domain names, and I CC to you and to Nick. So if you check your email, you'll see that I've listed the 3 domain names with links to the whois, so you can, if you have to look at the whois information, and I indicated when they expire. And the first one that expires is, I think, .org,
Day after tomorrow.
which is yeah. So I'm hoping that Nick doesn't forget about it. So we have to, sometimes if you don't respond soon enough, they throw it into the wild, and people start bidding for it.
Yeah, I won't be able to talk to Tim until tomorrow night. So
That should be okay. He'll have the email. Hopefully he'll be primed to take the next step.
cool. All right, let me direct the microphone over to Tom.
Oh gosh, what shall you have me say?
Whatever you choose to say, but you get equal time.
I have no updates. I've been so busy with work. We're decommissioning all of our radio sites. I spent the entire day today, plus over at Kingston. Yeah, we had some snafus with administration, I'll say, because we don't own the tower there. We're a tenant on the tower, and they didn't have their poop in a group when it came time to say, okay, yeah, go ahead to remove your antennas. You'd think that they'd want us to, but anyway. So that we had a couple-hour delay, and then of course then the snow hit and the wind and whatnot. So we get to go back tomorrow to finish. So
Oh boy.
it's been issues like that all up and down the line of getting this stuff done. So work has been taking a big bite out of my time lately. And I'm gearing up for a vacation. So hopefully I can get some things done before I go, but I think some of the major stuff's gonna have to wait till I get back.
Yep. Okay, where do we stand with Providence Mount St. Vincent?
Okay, I've got the panel antenna. I've got the radio mounted in it. All the cabling's all done internally. I've got a basic configuration into it. What I need to do is, or somebody who may want to, take the actual configuration that's in the current node up there and just copy all those minute details, like the name, and I've got it just kind of a temporary so they're not exactly the same. I don't know if I put the lat long in there or not. Things like that, just minor little details that have to be plugged in to the configuration, and then it has to get installed. So the hardware part of it's done. It's just a couple of small little tweaks to the configuration of the radio itself, and then getting it put in.
I'm going to see Frank in the morning. Do you want me to ask him to meet up with you like on Saturday? Well, we have our dinner Saturday.
We can talk about it at the dinner, depending on the weather, if we all get there.
Yeah. It's
we can talk.
my streets are clear outside.
Yeah, it's my driveway is definitely white now, so and it's gravel, so it's sticking. But yeah, it was interesting over in Kingston and coming down the steep hill. We have to come down from the site down to the back down to the ferry dock. Luckily, it wasn't ice yet, but I imagine before the night's over, it will be. So I don't know about getting back up that hill in the morning.
Yeah.
We'll see. But
Helicopter.
well, they won't even let us fly a drone at that tower site. No drones allowed there. So it's like, wow. We found out after we flew a drone and took pictures. They said, "Oh, you can't fly a drone there."
Must have some equipment on the tower that belongs to those 3-letter acronym agencies.
AT&T. That's the only
FBI.
sort of 3-letter one that's there. No, I don't think there's any federal. I mean, it's an old Nike site, but it's there's no. I mean, it's just public safety stuff there now. So, and cell site. I think AT&T and Verizon are both on that tower, but American Tower owns it, and they're very persnickety of late about stuff. I can understand stuff going on the tower. You'd want rigging plans and safety plans and all that, but when you're taking stuff off, you're not putting heavy cranes and things like that on the tower to install stuff. You're just lowering antennas with ropes that are already on the tower. So anyway, I won't get into all that stuff, but yeah, as far as that, we can discuss Saturday night about the logistics of getting this panel antenna put up.
Okay. Because I think Frank would be the best bet for that at this point while you're on vacation.
Yeah, as whoever wants to climb the tower, stick it on her. I mean, that's pretty much the hardest part.
Well, how far has it got to go up on the tower?
I'd say put it up as high as we can put it physically.
Oh,
and we wanted
Frank may not wanna climb the tower.
No, Frank's not going to climb. No, absolutely not. I don't know if Ryan would be interested in helping out with that. Being a pole climber. And I don't know if I'm going to have time to do that before I get back. That's the problem.
Okay.
And then of course, running a Cat 5 that'll reach, because the one that's up there now is not long enough to go up to the top. And of course, it has to be mounted where it's going to give slightly west of due north. It's a 120-degree panel, I believe, but we want it not due north, but slightly west of due north, maybe 350 degrees to I don't know 115, something like that. Because we want to cover
Saturday then.
Yeah, we want to cover Kurt and Ken and Eric that are slightly west of due north from that site, and then of course Frank and me on the southeast corner of that quadrant. So
yeah,
and then that'll also hit Beacon Tower and things like that. So.
Anything else for the good of the order? Because we've been on for an hour. Not seeing anything. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.